Okay, so let's make a painting. Everybody ready to do this? Let's see. Back in action. I should do that without talking, right? Okay. Everything good? Good afternoon, or yes, it's officially afternoon, everyone. My name is Michael Markowsky. Welcome to my studio. Today we're going to be making another painting by another one of my very favorite artists. This is our second painting that we're making by, or recreating by, the great artist Paul Kane. We made a painting of his just last week, or actually I made it a few weeks ago, but I broadcasted it while I was on vacation just a few days ago. So as I was getting ready for this evening's show to paint the Matthew Wong painting, I was looking at things, starting to set things up, and thought, you know what? It's been a few weeks since I've made a painting. Maybe I need a little bit of a warm-up to get back into the flow, and I didn't get a chance to do... I had done 2 outlines for this Paul Kane painting, and I only did one painting. This one right here. Maybe I'll just put that right on the screen. This is the one that we did just a few days ago. This is Scene from the Northwest, Portrait of John Henry Lefroy. He was a scientist who was traveling across Canada trying to map the position of the magnetic North Pole to help future travelers navigate the country as easily as possible. So we did this painting. This painting took us about 5 hours. Well, I should say it took me roughly about 4 hours to paint, but I did a lot of talking before the episode and at the end of the episode. About an hour, 45 minutes at the beginning, and half an hour at the very end. Mostly because I thought it was important to talk a little bit about some of the controversy that surrounds Paul Kane as he's been reevaluated today, 150 years since his death, because of his depiction of the indigenous people in his work and how he kind of rearranged different scenes, different people, different clothing, landscapes together to create these essentially fantasy portraits of the indigenous people he met, which is really a shame because he did these fantastic drawings, which we're going to look at here in a second, that he made during his epic journey across Canada, beginning in 1846, going all the way from York, which is now Toronto, all the way out to Fort Vancouver, and which is in Oregon, not the city of Vancouver, because there's 2 Vancouvers. There's Vancouver, Washington, and Vancouver, British Columbia. So he took the Columbia River all the way down to Fort Vancouver, and then he went up through Puget Sound, where Seattle is, and then to Fort Victoria, and then came all the way back to Fort York. And he took all of these amazing sketches that he did and then transformed them into paintings over the next 10 years. This painting here he made before that journey. He made this painting, he poured everything he possibly could into making this portrait of John Henry Lefroy, because what he was trying to do is trying to convince the governor of the Hudson's Bay Company, the HBC, which at the time owned most of Canada. Pretty much everything west of Toronto was owned by a company, which is a little bit hard to imagine that a company... so it would be almost like imagining Amazon owning, like Amazon.com owning, most of North America, right? Maybe that's already happening. But anyway, so he made this portrait to try to impress the head of the Hudson's Bay Company, who, again, ran that territory, to give him safe passage and also potentially let him catch rides with the fur traders that were going back and forth. The Hudson's Bay Company was essentially a fur trading company that were trading with the indigenous people capturing different furs of bears, beavers, moose, etc., and then bringing them back out east to actually eventually sell out in Europe, right? So he made this painting, he poured everything he possibly could into making it the greatest painting possible so that Simpson would financially support his journey, which happened, right? And while he was on his way, all the way across country, he filled up all of these journals. It might be a good idea for me, before I leap into this, to actually show you how to get this whole process started. Maybe what we'll do, because I got some great resources, some books. Literally, you're going to look at his journals for just about 5 minutes here, because I think it's fascinating stuff. But this is the painting we're going to create, and this is the outline that I've done on this canvas, and I'm going to show you how to do that here in just a second. So this is the original outline. You can find this outline on the Dropbox, and let's take a look here. I will show, oops, I want this, here we go. So you will see a link to a Dropbox folder, and in this Dropbox folder you're going to see all these awesome paintings that we've already done. And let me think of a few here. If you're interested in today's landscape painting, a few other, you probably love this Carl Rungus painting. That's a big landscape that we did. That was I'm really proud of how that turned out. Another landscape, a fantastical abstract landscape, is the Lawrence or Agnes Pelton painting. We did actually a number of these. We had Asian History Month, and a number of these Asian artists here, I think actually all the Chinese artists, Qi Baiqi, Wu Guangzhang, Lin Fengmian, and Li Qiren, all did landscape. Or no, sorry, the Lin Fengmian we did a portrait. Sorry, but for the most, those are all landscapes. The Trilok Singh Chittakar, that's a landscape. A.Y. Jackson is a landscape as well. Sherry Boyle is kind of, it's a ocean with a surfer on the top. That's kind of a landscape. Anyway, let's get right into the painting. So if you go all the way down to the bottom here, you click on Paul Kane, you open this up, you're going to see 6 files. These 3 on the bottom were for the most recent Paul Kane we did, the portrait of John Henry Lefroy, and the top 3 here correspond to this painting. You'll see the original, and then you'll see 2 versions of the outline. One is a JPEG, one's a PDF, otherwise completely identical. Just whatever is easier for you to print out. So I think what I'm going to do is I'm just going to play this video. I'll talk along over top of it as it plays, and we'll just, let me see, no, and I'll just sort of explain a little bit how the tracing process works here. So see here, I'm using a 9x12 sized canvas. And I got, if you want to get this exact one, you can order it directly from Amazon. There's a link in the description below for that. And then here's the printout from the Dropbox. You just download it, print it out on your printer at home, inkjet, laserjet, it doesn't matter. The thinner the paper, probably the easier. But I just like thick paper, which sort of makes things a little bit tricky because you got to push a little bit harder with your pencils. You probably see me break my pencils a few times. And then here I'm using some carbon paper, and you can see I'm using the same sheet of graphite paper many times because really we just want to get the image onto the canvas so that we can begin this process. So here we go, put that carbon paper underneath. You can use graphite paper, lots of different, and you can get graphite paper and carbon paper at any art supply store, should have it. But if you can't find it, try your local fabric store, because people will often transfer their patterns from that they get onto fabric using the same sort of graphite or carbon paper. Okay, so you can see I didn't include all of the details there, just the main elements, and then we peel it off, and here we go. There you've got, let me see, let's just close that. So you can then take this and you can recycle it, you can paint on it. They're actually kind of good to use as like a test to If you want to kind of paint on it while you're painting to see how the colors are working out, then you've got this image. What I'm going to do next, I'll get my paints out, and I'll start this process so that while this canvas is drying, I can do a little bit of talking about the history behind this painting, which I think is fascinating. Absolutely fascinating. Everything that I use can fit inside of a shoebox except the palette itself and the canvas, of course. But I think it's really important to me that all of my art materials can fit in something relatively small so that I can pack up or set up very quickly. Because I know that's a big obstacle for a lot of people is, well, I'd love to paint, but it's so messy. And, well, you can see that I just basically set up here in a small place to make this painting pretty quickly. And I'm not, you can put it back into a box and put it back on a shelf in your kitchen or your bedroom without too much fuss. So what I've done here, just to get started, and I do this at the beginning of every episode and I talk about it all the time, but generally what I use is just a warm yellow, and I'm going to coat the surface of the canvas with it. You could use a warm red or a warm brown to do this exact same thing, or a kind of yellowish brown. This is typically what a lot of artists, particularly Paul Kane, would have done back in the day. If you look at, there's lots of videos, kind of older videos, I should say, of artists demonstrating classical painting techniques, and they'll do something very similar to this. I do see a lot of other people on YouTube who omit this kind of detail and just start painting directly onto a white surface, which is fine, but I think you're going to get a different result than the original masters who would have primed the canvas with a wash like this in order to really make their lives a little bit easier, right? So that you don't have to worry about trying to hide all of the white of the canvas. The other thing too is it adds maybe a little bit of consistency. You remember, like, you think a couple hundred years ago, canvas might not have been quite as consistent of a color and weave as it is today, right? Everything was done by hand, and as much as we like to think like handmade things can be done really well, the other thing that happens is a little bit of inconsistency. You know, all of these canvases are made in a factory, and therefore there's maybe, you know, you sort of expect to get the exact same thing all the time, and that the whole surface is even. So one of the things artists would spend a lot of time historically doing is prepping the canvas so that it is as kind of, I guess, regular and, as I say, consistent as possible. See lots of things in the chat there. I'll get to that in a second. So let's see, I've just been on vacation for 2 weeks. I thought I just got a whole bunch of rags out here. So I'm gonna wash this brush off here. I see in the chat, Paula says, or Donna says, hi everyone. And Paula says, hi Donna, is this live or is it video? Donna says, I'm not sure. Donna says, Michael isn't answering, so it's probably live. That's pretty funny. Yes, I am here live, in person. The previous 3 videos I pre-recorded and then broadcast live while I was live commenting, so, which confused a few people. YouTube doesn't encourage that kind of thing, because often people upload you know, copyrighted content and broadcast it live. So that's really what they're trying to do, is they don't want you to really broadcasting pre-recorded stuff. So that's why I was kind of a little on the down low about it. But I think I tried to do it in the spirit of a live broadcast, right? Without showing you how the painting ended at the end, etc. So let's leave I'm going to just wipe this down just for a second here. So I'm going to move some library books into position while this dries. And I find this stuff super fascinating. I'm going to try to keep this down to, I'll even set a timer on my phone here so that I don't get carried away, which I tend to do all the time. Let's see. Let's set a 5-minute timer, Michael, so that I don't blab on for too long. So here's 5 minutes, and then I promise by that time that canvas should be nice and dry, and we'll move on. I just want to show a few different sources here to talk a little bit about the history behind today's painting. So a few different books that I have. This one, Wanderings of an Artist, is the book that was produced based on Paul Kane's journals that he kept on this epic journey from Toronto to the West Coast, all the way back to Toronto. Now, what's interesting about it is it's sort of ghost written by someone else, we're not sure who took his notes from his journals and then expanded upon them. And there's a lot of debate as to what is Paul Kane's words and what is the ghostwriter's words. I'll get to that in a second, but I think I want to just sort of show this is another great book. Paul Kane, The Artist, Wilderness to Studio, which is absolutely essential, absolutely fantastic document, scholarly thing put together. But let's just sort of look here. And I want to try to show as much as possible, and then if people want to pause the video and read some of this in greater detail, you could certainly do that. So this gives you an idea of what his journal entries were like, right? So actually going right to close to where we're going to pick up the story here. So here he's talking about his journey along the Saskatchewan River to Fort Edmonton. So you could see, again, we continue up here. I'm just going to kind of scroll this up here again. If you want to pause this, you can. Right? Let's go up here. The reason why I'm a little bit, I planned to start this video about 15-20 minutes earlier than it did is because I was like, oh, I found all these, and I started reading them, and I got kind of sucked into the text. So let's put that up on the screen. You can see here's him traveling along, and this is not by Paul Kane. This is a drawing of the Fort Edmonton, which actually I'll show in a couple of minutes. You can see the very same location from Google Maps, and it's kind of fascinating to see where what that location looks like today. So basically, Paul Kane arrives in Fort Edmonton. What is the date? Let me check. What day was that? It was like the 26th of September, 1846, I believe. So, and I think he's there for about 4 days. I think they're there. Sorry, I'm just going to continue scrolling up here because not everyone has access to some of these books, and maybe somebody else might find this helpful here. Let's go up here. I think this kind of concludes, or actually, I see a few more quick mentions here. There is more in this book. Oh, I'm at 1.5 minutes. Michael, you do such a poor job of staying on task. What's also interesting is, so obviously he went all the way across the country and then he came all the way back. He actually spent about 4 or 5 months, what was he, December, January, February, about 6 months in Fort Edmonton on the way back. I think he arrives right before New Year's, 1846, and then leaves in May of 1847. I'm going to stop here. And should we look at the sketches real quick here? So this this gives you an idea of the difference. We talked about this issue in the previous episode. The previous episode, as I said, there was a lot of detail we went into about some of the controversies surrounding Paul Kane and his. In fact, let's go to a full screen here, and I'll see how far I can zoom in. Okay. Oops, that didn't work. Come on. There we go. Okay. So here, if you can believe it or not, is a sketch of Fort Edmonton. Right? It's very hard to kind of see. It's obviously faded quite a lot. Here's another sketch that he did. Right, here's, I think, Fort Edmonton right up there. Let's continue here. I think that's the fort itself. And then I think this is a sketch he made on location. Again, these are all, I'll just kind of show you the captions here. Why is that thing focusing? Come on. Sorry. It's in manual mode, and yet it's just focusing. Fighting me, come on. Stay there. Okay. So you can see again, yeah, so that's D here. Made September 27th. Right? So I guess probably September 26th, 27th, and then they leave on October 6th. And then of course the painting that we're making today is actually there's a nice little text. Oh my goodness. So they're at Fort Edmonton for this. For, as I said, about I thought there was a shorter period of time. I guess there are a couple of weeks. One of the interesting things about that stay while they're in Fort Edmonton is, I mean, there's all sorts of stories. We'll take a look at his journal, but there's this huge fire that erupts on the horizon while they're there, and which is exactly where they were just hours before they arrived at Fort Edmonton. So here's a couple of quick little sketches that he made showing the fire as it was approaching. And then I hadn't actually seen this painting until just recently. I'm gonna zoom back out and we'll take a quick look at it. But this is this fire as it's kind of burning over the horizon. I think that's really beautiful. Let's just quickly zoom in on that. Okay, so let me. These are some of the people that he painted. Now, again, there's some question as to the validity of some of these sketches. Even this one, I've seen several different versions of that same painting. Again, here we can see some of the sketches of the buffalo that he. Buffalo or buys, buffalo. And then here's a big painting of the buffalo. This one is for quite well known. Okay, so let's just pack that up. It certainly went further over my allotted time. I just want to quickly, I'm going to do the same thing just with his journal here, just for anyone who's interested. Again, you can pause this. But we're kind of talking about September 19th. As they arrive, they get closer. Some of this is a little bit offensive. He tells this story in here about one of the indigenous persons that he meets along the way killing his own mother. And just the way that it's told is particularly very offensive from our point of view here. I think it's really interesting, though. They talk about there's like right here, this is kind of alarming, passing through a camp, an abandoned camp where everyone is dead. All the indigenous people are dead from smallpox. You can just imagine what that scene would have looked like. All the human bones and corpses being picked at by birds. And there's sort of a harrowing, he almost drowns as they cross the river to get into Edmonton. Yeah, he almost sinks in the water. They're borrowing horses from another group of people they pass by. They stay, you can see how actually big the fort is. There's about 130 people who lived within the thickets of the fort. And because Fort Edmonton was really one of the largest forts in the area, basically the largest fort before you cross into the Rocky Mountains. So you had to have lots of supplies to do that massive trek through the mountains, and so a lot of people would, load up there, or conversely, they would be crossing eastward through the mountains from the Pacific Ocean, and that would be the kind of the first site of kind of a large, well-supplied fort. So this is this incident here where he talks about, as I said, this kind of offensive story of... Anyway, I thought I would show that, and this book here, Wanderings of an Artist, as well. And this is also a great book, just for anyone who's really interested in following the historic trail of Paul Kane. It lists in here kind of the exact route that Paul Kane himself took if you were interested in recreating that journey yourself. I wonder how well all of this translates onto camera, and hopefully if you're watching it at least 1080p at the highest resolution, you should be able to see this text. My apologies if it's a little out of focus or blurry. Okay, so let's move on here and get to the painting. This looks like this is pretty good. It looks a little bit, still a tiny bit wet, so I think let's just move on to getting paint on the palette. Okay, so again, I apologize for running. I find all of this stuff, the history of that happens behind an artwork, as being super fascinating. Let's actually just focus that. It helps me understand a little bit about the conditions behind the art, how it was created, the life of the artist. It gives us an insight as to who they are and their own temperament. Okay, so I'm quickly putting some paint on this palette. If you're just joining me and you've never seen me paint before, which is usually about somewhere around 60 to 80% of the viewers for each of these episodes are watching me for the very first time. If that's you, you should like and subscribe to the channel so you know when these videos are popping up. Remember to hit the notification bell so that you'll get a little alert when you log into Facebook, and it'll just come up and you can see, oh, look, Michael's live. I can go watch him right now. Because today, this is a special bonus surprise episode. Really decided to do this about 20 minutes ago. So, this would be a good way, if you're just browsing YouTube, you'd find out a little bit about the show. Where did I put my white paint? I guess we'll use one of these tubes. Oh, that reminds me. Last time I was squeezing it out of a plastic bag that I had transferred it all into. That's right. I have a lot of tubes of paint that I have just this little bit of paint left inside of them, and rather than throw them out, I save them and I cut them open so that I can get the last little bit out of them, and usually I can get out 2 or 3 extra paintings out of them by it. So, wow, lots of stuff in the chat. Paul says, this is a surprise. I'm glad I have my iPad on to catch the class. Are we still going to paint the Matthew Wong painting? Yes, we're absolutely going to paint the Matthew Wong painting tonight at 4 p.m. Pacific time, which if I keep on talking, there'll be a little bit of overlap, but I think we'll be able to get this painting done. We will, because I'm going to try to paint this painting at a relatively, I'm not going to go quickly, but I might simplify things a little bit. Especially, I always try to remember this is supposed to be an intro painting class, so I'm going to try not to overcomplicate things and try to do it in a relative good amount of time here. Susie says, hi, it's live. Or Suzette says, hi, it's live. You were quick on that, Suzette. I appreciate that. Donna says, where are you from? Hi, folks. My grandkid's over, so I'm just listening and not painting. Hi, Deborah. Great to have you here. Deborah says, while we watch, my 6-year-old granddaughter has decided she wants to paint water lilies. Cool. One of these days I should do another Claude Monet water lily painting, because that would probably be something a lot of people would appreciate. Let me know in the chat if that's something you like. Deborah says, I told her that she should wait for the Monet lesson, but we saw water lilies when we were kayaking. Cool. Wow, kayaking. I've always found that to be a little bit tricky. I'm not quite so... I like the canoe because I love canoeing. There's something for me... Being able to see my feet gives me some sense of comfort. The kayak, when your lower half of your body's hidden I don't know. I'm a very visual person, so when I can't see my legs, I just feel a little bit vulnerable. Okay, so let's dive into the painting here. Let's get some brushes out. And actually, even before we start this, let's just take a look at the painting itself and think about how we're going to approach it. So this is... As a reminder, if you're watching me again for the very first time, what I'm going to do here is break the painting down in real time. I haven't really thought too much about how we're going to do this painting. So this is me using my understanding of painting, color theory, to explain how I would approach this painting. And I should also say that there's no one way to make a painting. There's not even Paul Kane's way of making today's painting. As mentioned, we're going to paint another painting later on this afternoon by Paul Wong, who has couldn't have taken a different approach to painting a landscape than what we see on the screen right now. So, and not only that, there's probably infinite ways of painting this painting that we see on the screen right now. So I'm going to show you the way that I would approach this painting that I think is going to get the best results, the fastest, and I think probably pretty close to the way Paul Kane would have done it. I'm always open to hearing how other people would approach it, and what's so fun is that you can take a picture of your version of today's painting, upload it to the Facebook group, and then we'll see how you did, and I'll give you some feedback I think we've got scheduled in a couple weeks. We're going to do another episode where we give feedback on your work. That episode will be focused primarily on the paintings we did based on Tom Thompson. Remember, we had Tom Thompson week last month. Anyway, so let's begin here. So what I want to do, oops, this is the previous painting we did, right? Obviously, is let's just look at this here. Now we've got this sunrise or sunset. Obviously the sun is down low on the horizon, and we are looking northwest from this angle, so that's the sunset, right? So and which is helpful to know, right? There's the color in the sky is different at sunrise than sunset. It has very, very similar qualities. We can get that kind of golden light as well, but it tends to be a little cooler in the sunrise, sorry, as opposed to sunset. So we've got this sunset here. We've got a cool blue sky, especially up here. This is a cool blue, which is great because he's using the color theory that we've been talking about over the past 114 episodes so far. So, which is you know, typical artists of this time are absolutely using the classical approach to color theory that I've been sort of teaching you, right? So we'll paint the sky, and then we're going to do a little bit of work in the clouds, and then we'll do, then we're going to move to the middle ground here, which we can kind of think of this middle ground extending all the way even to the fort itself on the top of this promontory hill here, right? This, by the way, is, if you were to stand in Edmonton today, you would be, I think this is, what do they call this? I can't remember what, in fact, I wanted to show you here real quick. Let's go Google Maps. Alberta Ledges. How do I hide that? Okay, so I think I dropped a pin here. If we look right here on this bridge, actually, if I just take this and we turn right around here to the northwest, this is basically the exact same view, right? Obviously, maybe a little bit lower below the bridge here because the bridge wasn't there. But you get an idea that this is where Fort Edmonton, this is the 5th version of Fort Edmonton, where it was at that particular time. Now this is the Alberta Legislature. You can see right there on top. This is the kind of the dome of the legislature, just for anyone who's, let's see. That's this building right up here, right? Okay, so I just think that's really cool, is when if we kind of go back to the to see what this location was 150 years ago, right? And how quickly things have changed. And then so obviously we're going to paint the hill here, and then this will be the foreground, which we'll tackle last with almost entirely warm colors. So let's begin with, this looks like it's nice and dry. And let's try to mix this color that we see in the sky. So what we're going to probably do a couple of coats of these colors. Let's start with a cool blue and some white. Thinking, I'll put a little bit more white in here. The more white I put in, obviously, the more it's going to cover up all of the yellow. So I think what I'll do is I'll start by painting kind of a thicker coat of it up in the top right corner. Let's get this down here. Just a bit of yellow that was still wet on the canvas. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring a little, even though there's clouds here, I'm going to take this and just kind of go in a little bit further than where the clouds were, so that I can paint clouds over top a bit of the sky. Like you could really just paint over the whole thing. And then here again, there's some clouds. I'm just going to paint right over top of them, and we'll paint those clouds over top here shortly. And then as I go into here, I'm just going to get kind of a more of a dry brush. As I said, you could paint this whole thing blue up there, and probably just the way I've obliterated everything, it wouldn't make any difference. But since I'm just going to paint a bunch of like white gray clouds over top of this area, it's just going to be sort of a little bit of wasted paint. So okay. As I said, I might do another coat of blue on there afterwards anyway. So now let's see. What if I'm gonna let this dry? We're gonna paint some cool yellow and white over there. So maybe what I'll do is I'm going to start mixing the gray for the clouds, and we'll get a bit of that in here while the blue itself is drying. So when we want to make a gray, we're going to take some of the warm red from all the way across the other side. Right, it took the warm red, mix it in here with our cool blue, and that's going to immediately create a, still, you can see there's a lot of red in here. So let's put some blue back in there to counterbalance it. And then we've got this kind of purpley color. If it's too purpley, that means we've got too much red and blue in here. I think we need even a little more blue in there. If it's too red and too blue, I'm going to put a bit of yellow in here. And you can see that just kills the color entirely, right? That kills the purple in there because it is literally on the other side of the color wheel. So we get a gray. Now you could just easily mix this with black and white to get a gray, obviously. I personally am a big fan of mixing my own grays. This is, if you've watched me for a while, you can see, you see me do this all the time. Now, if I paint this on here right now, it's going to be way too dark. So I'm going to take some of this paint off of my brush here. Let's get some more white. And there we go. You can see it looks like a gray. I didn't use any black whatsoever. The reason why I don't like, it's not that I don't like using black. It's just that I think I'd much rather have as many colors. I'm just a fan of bright color. And I'd rather have color in my painting than a sort of neutral dead color, which is what I consider gray to be. Not that there's always a place for it, and we have mixed it before, but anyway. Let's just put a bunch of this gray up here. I've lost a little bit of the original, the underlying drawing in here. As I said, we're going to paint some yellow over there shortly. So kind of low. Now that's pretty dark cloud. As I'm looking at it, I'm like, wow, that is dark. Maybe I'll paint a little bit of that over here too. And now that I'm going to take a rag. Where did I have that rag here? Is that gone? I'm just going to wipe off all the excess paint off of here. I'm not going to bother washing it because I'm just going to take the same color. I'm just going to take some white. We'll get a bit of that on there. And where should we start? Let's just take this. So as I said, this is not going to be a full tutorial on like the the nitty-gritty of painting clouds and skies and all that. I want to try to... This for me is kind of a bit of a warm-up for tonight's class, even though it couldn't be more of a different painting. I'm just wanted to do this and kind of have a little bit of fun while we're at it, right? Okay, we'll put highlights on these clouds and stuff later on. Maybe we'll take this cloud even further over here. We can paint this out and shape that cloud a little bit more. If I just zoom back out, you see where we're at. Okay, so maybe the next step, well, this is still pretty wet. Actually, while I've got these grays on my brush, you know what, I'm just gonna move down here and then I'll come back as the sky dries and I'll tackle that. So let's move right down or actually maybe let's, I'm just gonna show you how I mix this next set of colors. So in this area right here, we have, this is our background, and we want cool colors that we're going to mix into the gray and or white. There's a lot of gray in here, so that's really what we're going to use, especially because it's underneath here. If you were, you could use white in your background, which is often what people do, but especially if we've got this dark clouds over top, so making a bit more gray is going to darken that that part of the landscape. So we have in here, I mean, almost this color is very similar to what we have in the sky, really. So, you know, it could just be a combination of adding a little bit more cool blue in here, maybe, you know, a little bit of cool yellow to make it a little bit more green. So let's do just that. Let's take our palette and maybe let's start with a bit of cool blue. I'm just going to mix it right into here. All right, so I'm just sort of taking this, I don't know how well that turns out on camera, but I've got this cool blue. And again, we might transform as we paint this again, put another layer on. Maybe I can zoom in now. Oh, I want to be, whoa! Come on. Okay, here, let's just delete this and open those files up again separately. Frustrating me throughout the episode. There we go. Okay, now let's... There we go. So I'll paint this color, this kind of cold blue with gray into the background here. Ideally, like, I'm going to want to try to get rid of some of this yellow, the texture of the canvas. Oh yeah, so Josh, I've remembered, I promised you this evening we'll talk about gessoing canvases, because I got a bunch of canvases I want to gesso, so we'll do that too. I totally forgot. Okay, so we got that color in. It's not exactly I think there's a little more brown maybe on top, or even more gray, but this gives us a good foundation. Let's move right here. We'll tackle this little part here. We take this same color. Maybe I'm just going to add a little bit of yellow in there to change it, and maybe a bit more cool blue. So that we got something just, I guess it could be a little bit more different. So let's take a bit more cold blue. I always think it's easier to exaggerate things a little bit, especially when you're doing this underpainting, which is exactly what we're doing right here, than it is to try to go for subtlety right off the bat. All right, we'll put that there, and that's going to go here. Now let's just add more yellow into the same color. Right, we got a lot of, there's still a bunch of white in there that's diluting this color. And we'll put this right here. Maybe let's do that again. Let's get even more yellow on here. So basically what I've just painted, this is this area right here, and then I painted this area right here, and then I painted this area right here, and then this little area here. Not quite, I mean, I could even add just a bit more. Cold yellow on top of it. And obviously things are changed. I mean, like, really that horizon is right down here. Or not horizon, where the water's edge is. But I'm not super concerned about any of those details just yet. Okay. So, you know what, I think I'm just going to continue with, because this is still kind of wet in the clouds. So why don't we just move a little bit further forward in the landscape. And we'll come back to the sky as we go here, because I'm making good progress. That's making me feel pretty happy. So what I want to do, let's say this hill here, right? We can even take, I'm going to take some of this color that I got. I'm going to start introducing some warm blue into it and warm yellow into this color. Now we're going into our middle ground. And I'm going to take just a little bit of cold blue and put it in here. And that's what's going to give that area just that little bit of pop, that color that's it's pretty kind of a saturated color in that area. Like it's got that cool, the cool blue just has kind of quite a unique phthalo blue kind of quality that I really like. So put that in here. And then let's see, can we use that same color? I think maybe we'll use that same color on the hill here, but we're just going to now we're just going to take more warm blue and mix that together. Let's add a tiny bit of white in here at the top of the hill. You notice I'm using this big wide brush here, right? I'm not getting worried about small little details. All right, this little path, I just want to be able to keep some idea of where it actually is, but I'm not gonna fuss over that. Let me see. All these teepees here. I'm just gonna go right up over top of that. Oops. Sorry, right here. So we get this kind of little bit, there's a bit of white in here, so it's just dulling that color down just a little bit, which is perfect for what I want to do. Let's see, we're at the bottom, almost at the bottom of the canvas here. So as we get closer in the bottom, you can see we're just gonna add a lot more yellow, warm yellow, into the bottom, into this color. So there's much less white. In fact, you could even kind of get rid of the white on your brush if you wanted. And let's see, these are bushes down here. Okay. Get even more. I'm just bringing a bit of that same color back up into that hill there. Even some of these trees just quickly. Now let's take a look at the pathway. So we've got this kind of brown pathway that's going up through the field up to the top of the hill. So let me see, I'm going to use, rather than mixing a new color or do anything, I'm just going to keep on using the colors I have. We've got this green here that we used warm blue, warm yellow for. I'm going to take some warm red and just mix that in there. I'll change that quite dramatically. Actually, that's not bad. Let's take a little bit more warm yellow, mix that in here, and boom, we've got a brown. Right? If you find this is too orangey, just add a little bit of warm blue back to it, and you're going to have your trail right on there. Okay. There's a bit of white in here that I'm not super big fan of, but remember, this is just our underpainting, so let's just paint this. Right in here. Maybe I'm going to finally have to go to a smaller brush, but not too small. Because I don't want to get... I have much smaller brushes than this, but I think that's good. Let's use this same color for all of these teepees here. I think, you know, this, I could add a bit more yellow in them so that they're, because we got that light shining on them, but oops, there was a bit of gray or something on this brush. This is what happens when you've got, oh, you can't even see what I'm doing. Okay, Michael. So I've lost a little bit of the shape there. We'll get that back. Now the fort itself, that's also a gray. It's very similar to the sky, right? I think this is a wood fort. We know that from historical documents and even from Paul Kane's writing. So I think I'm just going to take the brown that I just mixed here, and let's just take some white. Take a bit of this gray and mix it in here. So we got a bit of gray and white. And I'm just going to paint this right across. I know there's more detail in this fort than that, but we're still in the underpainting stage here, and I have a feeling when I start putting some of this yellow over top, I'm going to obliterate it. I mean, probably if I had a little bit more patience, it would probably be a good idea for me to do that first, but I'm just going to keep plowing forward here at a pretty good speed. Okay, now let's get these cliffs done here. And it's basically the same thing. In fact, I'm going to keep this brown and just mix more white into here. I think when I go back over this shortly, I'll put maybe a bit more color back into here, some yellows and such, but and you know what, I'm just going to take a bit more of the brown and mix it into the color for this area right here. And we can kind of solve, give this more shape later on. If we want to make it a little more jagged or whatever, and we're going to put some shadows on there. I think that's good for right now. So let's just sort of look. I guess the last thing we want to do is the water here. And we'll kind of use a bit of a cool blue, and then we'll kind of just mix cool blue and get closer to warm blue here. So let's actually, let me just do that 1 second. Let's go to this view. I'm just going to clean the paint off of these brushes. And I'll put them in the water. And then let's take a bit of a smaller brush since we've got some details here. I'm going to take some white. Oops, white and cool blue. Basically the same color that we used for the sky. I guess I could have used some of this for the sky. Yeah, I'm just going to use this. I was just thinking to myself, should I put a little bit of gray in there? And then I'm thinking, you know what, maybe if we want to gray it out, we'll do that later. So I'm going to try to get this as straight as possible, parallel to the bottom of the canvas if I can. I think there's something like this happening here. I'm not even looking at the screen or at the painting, but I'm just sort of trying to shape it out so it works for me. Now, I know you're probably like, wow, that's way too bright, Michael. That's okay, because we want this, the water, we don't just see the surface of water. Water is transparent, or semi-transparent at least, right? So like river water. So we're going to see a little bit below the surface of the water. So I want to have water underneath the top layer of water. So I'm going to put that little bit bright color there. Now I'm going to come back and I'm just going to start adding some warm blue into this color as we get closer to the foreground here. Where this is here is, I guess, right that point right there. Let's move over. We're at the edge of the painting, so I'll just get a little bit more warm blue onto that color. And it becomes kind of purpley, right? Okay, so let's just take a look and see how we're doing after we've been painting for, how long? About half hour or so, 45 minutes. Okay. Not bad, right? So hopefully, and then obviously this probably stands out as a little bit of a problem, but I think we'll tackle that right now. But I think I just want you to see already how the warm and color temperature relationships in this painting are working to help create some depth in the painting, right? We've got our cold blue up in the sky, so that looks like, and there's white in it, so it should look like it's the furthest thing in the in this painting, right? We've got our gray cloud up above here, and then we've got cool grays and blues right back here, putting a little bit of yellow in it, more and more yellow into the same color. So we're getting, it's still cold and it's further in the distance, but it's still, but there's less gray in it as it's getting closer to us, right? We've got our cold blue here, and as we get closer, it's warming up. Same sort of thing in here. We've got warm green, but there's some white in it, right? I think we might have put a little bit, I think it was just white I put in there, maybe a good bit of gray, doesn't make much of a difference. And then we add less and less, or just more and more warm yellow, I think is all I did, is just to get this warmer as we get closer to the horizon. Now obviously all the colors aren't exactly perfect, because at this stage of the painting I have literally zero interest in making it perfect. My goal is just to get the broad outlines. It's a sort of like the painter's version of the outline, right? This is, you know, even Tom Thompson, I was thinking of Tom Thompson, but, you know, I guess I'm thinking of Tom Thompson or Paul Kane making a sketch on location. Tom Thompson would, unlike Paul Kane, made oil sketches. Like, so he took out Tom Thompson would take out a panel about the same size and his paints and make a really quick, maybe 1 hour painting of what he saw, then take it back to the studio and make a much larger, more refined version of it. But, you know, if he did that, if Tom Thompson was Paul Kane, this is probably pretty close to what Tom would have done himself. Obviously, we haven't done any of the kind of shrubs and all that, but I feel pretty good about this so far. Wow, I see lots of stuff in the chat. Deborah says, oh, I hope you do paint water lilies. That would be great. Okay. Deborah says, Michael, just to help encourage you to kayak, canoes tip more than kayaks. This is a fact. You will be so safe. I have seen lots of people in kayaks. You can kind of, if you go under, you can fairly easily flip the other way. Yeah, I don't know. I guess I just needed to, let's say, dive in. I don't know what's the kayaking metaphor. Try a little to paddle in a kayak. Deborah's signing off. Joshua's here. Hi, Joshua. I will skim through the live stream, but I'm in the process of getting my own studio and also getting ahead of everyone, and I'm almost done with the Titian painting, Daniel Barbero. Okay, you're a few weeks ahead of us there, I guess, eh? Joshua says, also, I don't know why, but it's satisfying watching you mix paint. I love it. Thanks, Joshua. I appreciate that. I think it is kind of neat to see how colors transform, right? It's for a lot of people, it's magical. And for a lot of people, it's precisely why they find painting so scary, is that it seems like a magic trick. You take two colors, you mix them, and all of a sudden you got a third color, a different color. And it can seem sort of like, you know, like some kind of voodoo kind of, like, yeah, it can seem a little bit strange. And so one thing that one of the main reasons that I'm doing this whole show, beyond, like, it originally began just to document the classes I was teaching when the pandemic hit, so that my students, some of which are watching right now, who took classes with me in person, all of a sudden we couldn't gather together. I'm like, oh, how do I keep my momentum going and satisfy people's yearning to learn? And then it's obviously very quickly transformed into an art project in and of itself. And my own art practice prior to doing these live streams teachings was making artwork and documenting the process of how they were made. So making paintings at the North Pole, or making paintings while strapped to a car, or strapped to a boat or a truck, etc. Making drawings in a fighter plane going faster than the speed of sound, right? All of these are things I did, right? And documenting them because they're kind of unusual setups, right? But I do feel like a responsibility to kind of open the studio up so people can see the process of an artist. Because for the most part, most artists historically have been very secretive about their process and how they got to these masterpieces. And that is great for creating the mystery. Obviously it is it helps create the myth of these genius artists that just touched the canvas, Mona Lisa, Mademoiselle d'Avignon, another great painting. But it's, as a viewer, like, wow, it's amazing. There's no way on earth I could do that. Whereas trying to open it up, I think, especially for beginner artists, makes it, I guess it takes some time to do, but it's not impossible. Just like making, I don't know, a turkey for Thanksgiving. If you've never made it, it's like, wow, this is just too, but obviously your parents have been doing it for generations, right? Dawn is redoing her studio, wants Josh to take pictures of his. Josh, I'll totally take photos of my studio once it's done. Okay, so I think this is pretty good and dry. So what I'm going to do now is let's paint this yellow on the horizon. And what I'm going to start by doing is mixing a cold yellow with white. And I'm going to start bringing it up into here. And then I'm going to start adding some glazing medium. And then we're going to kind of blend it out as we go here, right? So the difference is if I mix yellow and I mix blue together, we're going to have green in this transition period. And I don't want green in the sky. I want yellow fading into blue. We're going to get a bit of green just because of the way this optical mixing effect is going to work, but we want to try to minimize, I suppose, that a little bit. So let me just wash my brush good. Or wash my brush good. And let's take some cool yellow. White. Got a bit of blue on there, which is not super happy with, but that's okay. That's pretty close to the color that he's using there. So let's just take this. I mean, I could have done this the opposite. I could have put this color down first and then put the blue over top. That would have also worked. So I didn't even think about that until just now, but okay, so now I'm going to take some glazing medium. I'm just going to put a little bit on my palette there. And you know what? I'm going to take this rag. I'm just going to wipe off the excess paint here. Just because there was a lot of paint on there. I'm going to get mostly glazing fluid on my brush. So this is basically a very transparent color. And I'm just going to come up Get a little bit of that color there. In fact, I'm going to take even more glazing fluid. And then I'm going to come down. See, I knew I should have blow. Every time I have the instinct to blow dry something and I don't do it, the painting punishes me. So I'm gonna blow dry this. I'm gonna mute the microphone here in a second. So what happens is, you know, when paint is almost dry and then you brush over top of it, it's like you just wipe it right off, which is really frustrating. So I'm just gonna blow dry this so that all of this dries, and then we're gonna blend these two sections together. So okay, so let's just continue this. I'll get a bit more glaze, or the yellow on there. And the idea is really, I just want to soften the area between these colors, right? So I maybe get a little bit more glazing or color on there. I can go over this cloud as well. And let's just take a look at the original. You know what, I'm going to take this same color and just kind of come up into the clouds. I wasn't really expecting to do this, but I like the effect it has. I'm going to darken some of these clouds here as well, but you know, I kind of like this light up in there, so that kind of works well, doesn't it? Okay, so again, I'm going to blow dry this again because there's still a bit of a gap here, so I want to close that gap, but I have to be a little bit patient, which is something I struggle with, right? So I'm going to blow dry it one more time. Let me mute this. I thought the heat was done, but my camera just overheated, so I'm just going to get an ice pack and put that on the camera there. So give me 1 second. Maybe let's just put this together on the screen for a second while I run and get an ice pack. I'll be right back. It's interesting. I always find that the light, this camera, after it overheats like that, tends to get a little bit darker for a while. So anyway, let's, I blow dried that. Let's keep on going here. Some glazing fluid. Just need more yellow. There we go. Might have to do one more of these. Now taking my blending brush just to soften that. I've still got all this paint on here. I might as well continue in this area here. In fact, let's go oh, some brown came off of that. Okay, maybe I'm just gonna once again wipe excess paint off, and let's blow dry this again. Okay, and I think we'll, well, I'm just saying, I think we only need to do this one more time, but famous last words from, so it'll be my epitaph. Okay. I'm hoping we should be able to bridge this gap one last time. It's a lot of, this is kind of thick. We'll see how well this works. Let's get, I could do another one. People always give me a hard time for spending so much time on my backgrounds, but I do think, especially here, right, with a landscape, that can be, it's pretty important, right? I think I need one more of these. Okay, so let's, oh, so close, but no cigar. Okay. Let's see, can we get this? It's a little thick up there. Let's get more glazing fluid. Ah! So I just get so impatient, and this is, I think, better suited to people with more patient temperaments, but I think you get the idea, right? I think, is that okay if I just move on? I think I do wonder, should I try to do blending up here? That's going to drive me crazy when I look at that painting later. That little, I know it's, probably can't even see it, but it's just this where I scrubbed it out a little bit. Just rearranging chairs in the Titanic, right? So I'll just keep on moving here. I like how this cloud has kind of gotten kind of illuminated though. So let's just see. Should I darken that corner of the sky though? Oops. I think I could do a bit of that. So let's take, where can I do this? Maybe a little bit of glazing fluid there. Let's get the glazing fluid on my brush. And see about painting. Just darkening that a little bit. I can blow dry that and get even darker, maybe? Okay, I promise this will... Get a bit more of the dark blue. Okay, not too bad. let's see where. I wanted to get a bit of that vignette quality, but I want to move on because I've spent, I think, maybe too much time on that part of the sky. Let's finish the clouds, and then we'll move down into the rest of the painting. Oh, Suzette says she's originally from South Africa, but lives in the UK. And Donna says South Africa is beautiful. I was there in 2004. I would love to go back someday, but I doubt I will. I'm living in a village in southern Alberta, Canada, but I'm from Vancouver. And Paula's from Alberta as well. And Suzette says, that's nice. Glad to be here. Suzette, there's lots of people who've been painting with me for a long time. And anytime there's new people, of which there's always lots of new people in here, get very excited and want to meet one another. So we got a fantastic community of artists that have been painting with me for almost exactly a year. September 15th was the very first of these painting episodes that we did, so we're it gets a month away from our anniversary. So glad to have you on board. Okay, let's do the cloud here. I'm probably not going to spend too much time here because I actually don't mind the cloud like that so much, but I think, you know, we've got this light kind of coming through the bottom of the cloud. We might want to just darken, have a little bit of a second layer up here. So we can do this as a glaze as well. Let's see, let's take a bit of this. It's still a bit wet. Let's see. I think maybe just darken it just a little bit. We'll see if that's too dark. But I'm going to take some glazing fluid and put that in here. That way I can blend this out, because clouds, you know, are kind of want that kind of transparent quality we see in clouds, right? So very subtle effect. That's still wet, so let's go to a dry one here. Let's even take this. A bit of that coming through. It's getting a bit of the top of that cloud in. I'm going to blow dry that in a second. Let me just see anything else. Not quite exactly what he has going on here, but I've never been concerned about making it perfect either. Okay, so I'm just going to continue this really quickly. Get maybe a bit more glazing fluid on here. And as I'm looking at the painting, I'm like, wow, I'm definitely a little bit off the mark in terms of the shape of this cloud. But we want the same kind of spirit of this kind of big imposing cloud kind of coming over the landscape of this small little fort on the horizon, right? Or I guess, it's one of the biggest forts that existed at the time in Western Canada as part of the HBC, but it's compared to the landscape, it's quite small, right? Also down here, I forgot about. We'll put some yellow back onto some of that later. So we've got these nice dark clouds here, maybe even. Yeah, maybe that's good. That's good for that. Okay. So let's move on. I'll clean some of these brushes up. This is my blending brush. Maybe I'll give it a clean that as well. So, not bad. Let's say been painting really for about an hour and a half, and we've got a fairly good sky and clouds. You imagine Paul Kane probably spent at least a few weeks on the original painting. He probably would have spent, days working on those clouds, really kind of trying to nail them as accurately as he possibly could. Or not accurately, because he wasn't there, but he's, certainly, that's another thing that's interesting. Actually, I sort of accidentally stumbled upon this just now, is you have to remember, he's mostly a self-taught artist. He did go to Europe in the late 1830s and sort of studied painting. He looked at the paintings of George Catlin when he was in London, England, or maybe met him. I'm not exactly sure what happened there, but Catlin was another artist, American artist, who traveled across the United States in the 1830s. And so he looked at a lot of the great paintings, classical paintings in the museums in Europe, and that was how to paint, right? That's the right way to paint. So he absorbed that information, went on this trip across Canada, came back to Toronto, using his sketches and what he knew from Europe of seeing the paintings there, created these, like this painting we're painting today. So really, it's sort of like the landscape of Edmonton, where we're here, through the lens of memory and European paintings of European skies is what we see here. So how accurate is it to the actual sky that he saw in Edmonton while he was there? It's been a while since I've been in Edmonton, a few years, but and I can't quite remember what the sky. I mean, I do remember Edmonton having these big, beautiful blue skies, and then kind of these sudden rainstorms that just roll in for an hour and then disappear, and then it's beautiful again. That's sort of very typical of Alberta weather. They say, like, wait 15 minutes and you'll get a different, the weather will change in Alberta, right? Okay, so what should we do next? My instinct is maybe to go to the fort, actually, which is, it is the main subject of this painting, but I feel like if we can get that, then, because it's kind of like right on this ridge, And it's going to be similar colors maybe than we have down here. So I think what we'll do is we'll sort of tackle this area and the fort, and then we'll kind of start working our way forward here, because I think that this is going to take not that much time, because it's fairly straightforward and there's not a lot of detail here. But let's zoom in. Let's see how much of this we can nail with today right here. Okay. So, where should we begin here? What colors? I think I was using the brown here before. I'm going to get a smaller brush. Yeah, let's try this one. Okay. So I've got this brown, remember? And it's mostly dry. That was just warm blue, warm yellow, and warm red that we used to mix this color. I'm going to take a bit more white. And maybe a bit of this gray that we had here. And all these colors are slowly kind of drying up a little bit, so they're getting a bit sticky. Which is not ideal, so I think I might have just enough of this paint to do this fort before I have to mix it again. So I think what I'll start doing is I'm just going to paint, because I got a darker color here. I'm going to paint this silhouette. I guess I'm going to need a smaller brush here. And then afterwards I can add some white to it, and which will kind of liquefy this paint again a bit. What is this? I'm just going to paint this as another, I don't know. Maybe I'm just going to paint it like he did there. I'm not sure exactly if that's another one of these kind of corner posts or what that is, but for some reason he's kind of left it. Doesn't it look like a little, there's a kind of a triangular shape there, but he didn't paint it all in? That is strange. And actually these kind of stick out a little bit over the edge of the fence. Small detail, but okay. Now it's a little bit darker, so what I'm just going to do is just take a bit of white and mix this into here. I'm even just going to add a little bit. Everything's really dry on the palette here, so I'm just add a bit of white to this. Now it's going to make this white a little bit more transparent, but if I've added a little bit extra white, that's actually fine, right? It'll make up for that. And then let's just kind of go over top of the highlights, or where the light is shining against this fort. And we may even want to glaze something over top of it afterwards to lighten it back up. So obviously this is the door to the fort right here. So we'll darken that. And then it's starting to get a little bit darker over here, right? Maybe. Now what's interesting is the Hudson's Bay flag is flying over that fort, which is also kind of a bizarre thing to think of. Like, they're not flying the British flag, they're flying the flag of this company. It's a, you know, probably it's kind of owned by the Queen, I guess. It's a what do we call that here in Canada? It's a crown property. Oh, this is kind of the back side. Let's get a bit of... Oops, it's a little bright. So, small details. Can I live with this? I think that's my question to myself. Got these little holes for guns to pop out. I know it's a little bit different than what he did here, but my scale is so small. This flag post. And I'm going to paint this flag white. So if I want to paint something over top of that, looks like they're surrendering. But if you want, we'll look at the Hudson's Bay flag here later on when we get to it. But that'll allow us to paint any kind of detail we want over there without it being kind of confused with the background and behind. Okay, so that's good. Let's just take a second. Oops, maybe a little far out. And then let's go this way. Joshua in the chat asks, will there be a John Singer Sargent class in December? I was checking on the schedule and didn't see Sargent, so maybe that would be a good fit since he is one of the greatest American artists of all time. John Singer Sargent. Well, is there a particular painting of Sargent that you are a fan of, Joshua? Let me know in the chat. He is a great artist for sure. I don't think I'd planned on doing a Sargent painting, but or at least not before the new year. You know, he would be a contemporary of Paul Kane for sure, and certainly a classically trained artist, right? Paul Kane is a self-taught artist. John Singer Sargent is sort of the opposite. Singer Sargent was, you know, I think he was even head of the Academy in the United States for a period of time. So, you know, I can't imagine like Paul Kane and Singer Sargent probably would not have seen eye to eye on a lot of things, right? Singer Sargent was kind of a member of the upper class of the United States at that time. He painted portraits of presidents, etc., versus Paul Kane was sort of, I imagine him as being a very like blue collar kind of guy, right? Although I think he had much higher aspirations for himself. Okay, so let's take a look at this. Like, I don't know. Do I really need to do that much? I mean, I got a bit of this yellow over top of it. I think really the only thing I could think about doing is maybe just complicating this with just slightly different colors over here, just to give it some variety, so it's not this big, it doesn't look like a wall, right? We want these to look like there's some, even though they're far away, that there's land masses and trees and darker and lighter areas back there. So we still have this gray. So let's think about how we could just take this gray, and it's almost all dry actually. Are we going to use much more of it? I don't think so. So maybe let's take a bit of cool red in here. Just a little bit. Let's add a bit of white to it. Maybe even a bit more. And I'm just going to put a little bit of glazing fluid in here just to make it just a little bit more transparent. So let's just kind of, let me zoom in here so you see what I'm up to. So I'm just right here. So I want this to be lower than in here. You can see he's done a great job of it here. I obviously wasn't paying attention, so when I come back here, I think I'm going to raise that cliff a little bit higher. Maybe I'll take just a bit of cool blue. That's a lot of it. Mix it in here with just a bit more white again. I'm just trying to give a little bit of okay. So obviously I'm playing fast and loose with the actual geography of this area, as you know, frankly, Paul Kane would have, right? It's not like he had some photos in his phone that he could refer to, go, oh yeah, I remember there was two little peaks. Like, he painted this picture somewhere between a year to 10 years after he actually was in Edmonton, right? So obviously there's going to be a little bit of change there. So let's take some of this cool blue. I'm going to mix this right into here again. Might have been a little bit too colorful. Just tone that down a little bit. bit of more gray in here and just kind of just muddy this up just a bit. Again, not exactly what he did, but he's working on a larger scale than I am. So that's good. Let's move back over to the other side of the river here, the north side of the river. And let's start getting this hill. So let's take some cool yellow. We're going to mix this into this color. And I want to make it kind of clear that it's in front of everything else here. Actually, I really probably should have painted this water first now that I'm thinking about it, but it's okay, we'll make it work. Okay. Now and it is darker, isn't it? Maybe I'll put a highlight, just like I'm going to do with the sky. We'll put a glaze on top of that afterwards. So let's just continue here. Maybe I'll mix this in a different part of my palette. Maybe I'll do that right here. And while it's still wet, I can kind of blend it around a little bit. We'll complicate things as we get into the reflections, but that'll be one of the last things we do. I am wondering if I should start doing that water now. Yeah, because I think I need to do this water before I add the things that are in front of it. So let's go back to the water. Just zoom back out just a little bit. And I think what we'll do is we'll glaze over top of this water. We're going to put in some kind of light gray. Actually, this could have been much lighter. Obviously, I'm a little bit more heavy-handed with my color. So where should we do this? I'm going to go to a blank space here on my palette. Put some glazing fluid there. A lot of green on here. I don't really want green because I'm going to make this go red. So I'm just going to wipe that off. And we'll do that again. Just cleaning my brush off. So let's put some, oops, that's a lot of glazing fluid. We won't use all of that. Take our glazing fluid. Let's take some cool blue. All right, and this is where we're going to put this. So we've got that cool blue is already there, and that's quite nice. So let's take a bit of this gray, mix it into that cool blue. I'm just going to kind of come across here. See, it looks like there's some rocks right in this area. Okay. And then I'm going to take a little bit of warm blue and just put that into this color because we're getting, oops, pretty. So I took a bit of warm blue. Maybe I'll take even a bit more. Now we could spend quite a lot of time doing some really nice effects with this water, adding some, there's some pinks and purples and all sorts of things in there. Just considering the time, look at, oh wow, I want to be done this painting in, I'm starting another class here in an hour and 15 minutes, so yeah, let's, okay, I'm going to really pick up the pace here. So I'm adding some warm yellow into here. We'll turn this into a green, right? Now that's going to be, I need to blow dry that. Okay. Now that also means we gotta really, this has got to be darker than the form in front of it. That's why I'm a little bit leery now that I made that so dark. Let's take warm, where should we do this? Let's do it up here. Warm blue and warm yellow. And if you recall, I added a bit of cool blue to that mixture. And kind of quickly fudging that in. Let's add a little bit more warm blue into this to darken it a bit. It's a little bit, so it's dark, maybe too dark. Again, I'm getting a little bit. Let's add a bit of white into that. Okay, now let's do the other side of the hill here. I'm going to use the same colors that we had here previously. So this is my warm yellow and warm blue. I need a bit more warm yellow here shortly. We're going to add also a bit of white into this mixture. Take a bit of, in fact, let's put a bunch of glazing fluid on here. And let's just zip over to the other side. And remember I said I want this cliff to be, let's actually extend it out a bit. Painting a little bit up into the shape of the hill there. As that dries, I'll come back to it a few times. Okay, so as I do this, I'm going to keep some of the underpainting in here and just really kind of darken and highlight certain places. And even take a bit of this green and go a bit onto the, let's go all the way up here. Take a bit of green and put it in the path a bit. It's not like this is a paved road. It's going to be a little bit, it's going to be grass and things growing all over it. Just needs a bit more white in there. So this is warm blue with some white in this green, maybe a bit too much there. We come down just less, or just adding a little bit more warm green and warm yellow into this area here. I could lighten that up. Maybe I'll do that as I come by. There is a bit of that light because you're just trying to focus on this cross here. While I do that, I can just take the same darker color. So if anything, I would darken the front side of these teepees here so that when we put highlights on that side, they'll really stand out a bit more. Okay, let's get some more warm yellow. Okay, so just mix some warm yellow into these paints. Okay. And as I come down towards the front here, I'm just going to start putting more and more warm yellow. I'm going to put some shrubs and stuff here shortly, but okay. Let's put some warm yellow into the muddy path there. Okay, I'm going to take a little bit of white. To get this hillside up here. Okay. Similarly, I'm going to take this white and warm yellow. Maybe just a little bit more warm yellow in there. Maybe just a bit more white again. Blend a little bit out because we got this. There's quite this bright light that he's got shining right over on this. erase here. Okay, I think that's good enough for that area. Obviously, we could do a lot more, but considering my time... In fact, let's just zoom out so you see where my painting is at this exact moment. I think what I want to do is the cliffs next. So we'll do the cliffs, and then I'll put in some of these bushes, and that will do the teepees. We'll see. So I should be done here. I really need to be done in about 45 minutes at the very, very latest, right? So let's mix another brown. Let's take some warm blue, warm red, and some warm yellow. Mix this together. You could see if we just left it together without the warm yellow, we would have a quite dark brown anyway, right? I'm gonna take that. Let's put some white on our brush here. It's very reddish, so let's add some more yellow in there. I like that color, but I think I just want to get more white on there. Okay. So let's zoom back in. I'm going to take this same color, because we got some of these little tiny rocks in the water. I wonder if this is going to be a good idea or a bad idea. A little bit of that. Okay, come back here. Now I'm just gonna wipe off that paint and go to this little bit of a darker mix. I just added more white to get what we had there before. So the deal with like rocks and everything is you want, like, it's got to be, you want like lots of highlights and shadows along the way. Now we're in a bit of a hurry, so I'm not gonna be able to get all of that in, but we're just sort of hinting that this is a cliffside. Let's go down here. So as we get, actually, let's do one little bit more, just a bit more brown in here. putting a tiny bit of that onto the other side, maybe even a tiny. Sorry, what I was doing, I'm putting a bit on this other side here. Let's just try to balance it out with a few more extra colors on there. Okay. So you got lots of suggestions of paintings to make, Joshua. I'll take a look at that in a second here. We'll see how I'm doing here time-wise. Got the same colors on my brush. I just add some warm yellow to it. And so now I'm going to move down into this area here. Taking a bit of this darker color. I mean, obviously, I want to do a lot more here, but sometimes it's good to have a time limit, and then you just stop kind of. It's just good for me to have a time limit, because I'm sure people who've been painting with me a long time know that sometimes I get bogged down into some of these details. So I'm just taking a bit of the same dark color that I've got on my brush. Putting that on, maybe even, I'm going to take this darker color, right? This is this one I mixed here. That was basically just warm blue, warm red, and warm yellow all together, just the raw color I mixed there. I think I'm just going to add it to the side, the darker side of these teepees. Let's get some more warm yellow. I need a bit of white mixed in here. If I get a chance, I'll put a little bit of warm yellow back into these areas. Oh, I didn't even realize there was a third teepee back here. I didn't get that. Okay, so we'll come back to that later. Likewise, I'm going to take this little bit of a highlight color, just add it a few places. Okay, let's come back. I might need to just zoom out, so I need to see the full picture here as I'm getting closer to to the foreground. Okay, so what I want to do is put these darker shrubs and things on there. So we're going to take our warm blue, warm yellow, mix up a green, and actually I'm going to use this kind of middle tone here, middle value, and yeah. I'll show you kind of how I'm doing this here. So I'm really kind of focusing on the side that's kind of away from the light, but there's also in, you know, trees, there's the leaves on the front are gonna catch a lot of the light, but they're also gonna cast quite dark shadows in the interior form of the tree, of these trees, bushes. So you know, if you're looking at this episode, like trying to think of like how, you know, like what can I learn about landscape painting through this particular painting here, it's like little things. If I back out again, and we'll see this as I continue to develop some of these darker areas, is that I'm using these as like receding shapes to emphasize the depth in the painting. Right, so let's now take this same color, let's add a little bit more warm blue into it, maybe even just a little bit. We'll see. We'll go kind of to start developing some shadows there. Okay, let's take a little bit more warm blue. Let's maybe I'll zoom in as we go here. You can see, obviously, look at all the beautiful detail he's got in here. I'm just not going to be able to get all of that here in the next 20 minutes. It should be done. So, you know, we'll do our best to get as much on here as possible. I'm using it also to, yeah, as I said, to give it a little bit of shadow, because the light is hitting these teepees from the left. Now you can see in the image down here, this is all stuff I've photoshopped, and the actual image was probably ended right about here. So I've extended it here digitally. So if you're wondering like what all of this weird stuff is, you can kind of use your imagination to make up whatever you want to go there. I just sometimes alter the image slightly just so it will fit on the kind of shape and size of canvases that we're using. Sometimes I actually do quite a lot of work to the image, because otherwise we would have all this weird empty area on the canvas that's left blank. Okay, I'm gonna keep on going. I'm gonna add maybe just a lot more blue for one final pass. Actually, that's almost a little bit too much. Maybe what I'm going to do here, I'm going to add a bit of cold blue into this mixture, cold red, because that's going to darken this color. It's basically I'm darkening the green without making it go too blue. Okay, now I could put a little bit of, I see he's got some kind of oranges in here. Maybe that might be a nice little touch. So let's take our warm yellow and warm red. Get a little bit more. Mix some orange. I'm also going to take a bit of the green back in here, because I don't want it might be a little bit weird, too orangey. So it's actually more like a brown here. Okay. Over the other side with this kind of brownish orange. Wow, you got lots of ideas of stuff to paint, Joshua. That's great. Okay, so let's zoom back out as we're getting close to starting to put on to get final details here. What can I do with my what's my best use of my remaining time? Probably these TPs. Does this, I feel like something needs to be articulate. Probably a little bit darker right along the horizon, maybe darker brown in there. Okay, so how about I'm going to take some warm yellow, maybe get a bit of brown on it, and use that on the front side of these teepees here. Just also going to paint that. I got this bit of a dry brush. We got this nice golden yellow that's all over the horizon, so I want to just get a bit of that. I could even glaze a little bit of that later, but I don't know. When I say later, I'm kind of at later right now. So, taking a bit of, making a really dark brown, but just adding a bit of warm blue in here. Might have been a bit heavy-handed there, eh? I'm gonna take this same dark brown, just kind of going along the shore, and I'm gonna also put a little bit of brown in the grass as well. Okay, I think now I'm going to use a much smaller brush. I'm going to zoom in here in a second. I'm just going to get some details on these teepees. Paula says we should have 7 classes a week, at least. That sounds great. If I was making money doing this. I do appreciate the donations that I get, but it's not really enough to make this my absolute full-time job. Now, I believe the indigenous people in this area actually used 15 poles, like quite specific number for their teepees. Obviously, I'm not going to be able to paint 15 of these shapes all over there. And the people there, I don't like omitting people in a painting, especially indigenous people. It feels like something that's been happening to them for centuries. So what can I do? How can I get these people? Let's say I got 10 minutes here. Gosh, I don't know. If I try to start painting them at this point, it might be even worse. There is this figure here. I like this guy. Well, he's pulling. There's a horse. That's a lot of detail there too for 10 minutes. It is a big part of this composition though. So maybe I'm going to take this. Maybe we need a bit more of it. This brown here. Let's see. We got. Paint this figure in really lightly, almost invisible, so if I make a mistake it won't really show up. Let's get some of the darker brown. So I think it's like a horse dragging probably furs up towards the fort to do some trading, I imagine. It's also, I'm going to really quickly paint these figures in here. There's like a dog over here too. I feel like this guy should be bigger because if that's the size of this figure needs to be taller. So let's do this horse. I'm taking some white, just mixing in with this brown. Take a bit of a darker brown. Trying to get this shape here. I see a few people have just donated some money through the chat there, are in send me emails. I don't know, sorry, I don't know exactly who at the moment, but I just want to say thank you to all those of you who continue to support the channel. If you want to make a donation, small or large, all of it is appreciated. As I say, I basically lose money every episode I do here, but I also really enjoy doing this, so if you want to support the work that I'm doing, there's a PayPal link in the description below, and oops, if you'd like to send a e-transfer or a actual check, contact me through the Facebook group is the best thing to do. And again, thank you so much for everyone and your continued donations and support. I really do appreciate it. I really wouldn't. If you go back and you watch previous or older episodes here, you'll see what the studio used to look like when I began. And I began just doing these episodes on my iPhone, and here I've got professional cameras and studio setup, so I built all these shelves in behind. All that kind of stuff is through people like yourself who've donated, so I appreciate that again. So I think this guy's whipping this horse, which, you know, is kind of hard for me to paint this level of detail. Oh, I see he does have a kind of little whip in his hand. Let's go back down here. I don't mind mine being a little bit vague in this area right here. It kind of looks like there's somebody doing something here, but I guess I'm realizing that these TPs come across here. Okay. Oh, the flag on the fort. Oh, and the crucifix. Crucifix. Okay, let's take some brown with white and get a bit of yellow on there. Where should this go? So this clues us into, tells us a little bit more about what's happening here. This is, obviously there's some missionaries who are living probably inside the church, or inside the fort, who are trying to convert the locals. So I painted the light brown, and then I'm just going over top of it with a bit of a darker brown. And then I think I'm gonna, I gotta wrap up here. So let's just let's take a look here for a second. I'm going to look up the HBC logo. Okay, so you can see this is what the flag looked like, right? Now, am I going to be able to get that onto here, considering the size of my fingernail? No. But let's see if I can get a little bit of detail. What if we... And honestly, I probably should have put a bit of white in these colors, so it's not... they're not so bold. Kind of looks like the Texas flag here a bit. So take a bit of white. Okay, I think that I might have to call it a day right here. Okay. Anything else here before I stop and clean up for the day that absolutely needs to be here that I can't live without? I do find that this right here is maybe a little bit too dark. I made the mistake of making this area, this hill, too dark, and then that made this have to go darker. Right, and now it's a little bit competing, coming a little bit too forward, so I am compelled to add more darker greens in this foreground here. Although I like the way it looks presently, I think it just needs we need to pull the weight of this picture down on the bottom. So let me do just that. Let's, to do this, I'm going to take, we can also use up a bunch of this extra paint here. I'm going to take some cool blue and warm red. We'll mix that together to get a dark color. Right, this is one of the darkest colors that we can get. Get all the dark blue I can out of here. Okay, and then let's take our warm blue. Let's mix up this dark green again. Okay. I'm just going to take some of this new color we just made. Put this here. And then just mix it into this to get even darker. So see how now that's giving a lot more weight to the bottom of this picture as there should be? I don't want to go too high because again, I don't want to, that's the whole reason I'm doing that is because of that area there. So I'm just going to take a bit of that paint off my brush and just get a little bit more warm yellow, I guess. Lighten it up a bit. Just integrate this a bit more. Okay, I feel much better about that. Kind of want to do something more to that figure, but do anything, put a little bit of green shrubs. Okay. Oops, where's this water coming from? Oh, it's not dripping. Okay, I think I gotta cut it. Well, in these rocks, maybe. So just putting little shadows on one side of those rocks. Okay, I think that's good. So we're actually at 3 hours, which is, for painting this complex, to be able to do it in that span of time, I think I feel pretty good about that. Yeah, is that okay? Can we live with that? This river's a little bit brighter, obviously way brighter blue, and I would tone that down if we had more time. Other things, I probably would spend more time in the clouds getting. Oh, I wanted to do detail on that cloud. Can I do that? Can I do that real quick? Do a quick glaze. So I'm gonna take a bit of cold yellow and white. Okay, wipe that off. And then get more glaze back on here. Maybe I'm just going to take a bit of warm red and just get this a little bit peachier. Okay, I think I'm not super happy with that, but it's just not bad. It's not bad. I think I can live with all of that. So can I do? Should I go back into this? Add just little highlights in these clouds. I better just walk away. I think that's a dangerous thing, is going back into that area. Okay, so this painting, my name is Michael Markowsky. And today is August 19th. It's really amazing to think about how we're just really a month behind him. Back in 1846. September of 1846 is when he painted this painting. That's crazy. Plains, Fort Edmonton, HBC, Plains Cree Assiniboine. And this is circa wow, okay. I'm so glad. I needed to get a little bit extra painting done today to get back into the rhythm of making art. So that feels good. I really like this painting, this composition. So getting it done here rather than just moving right on just felt like something I needed to do here. Just like I need to put a bit of green or something right back on top of that area here. Restoring my own paintings from my hands all over them. Okay, so thank you everyone for joining me for another one of these episodes. We're going to see you back here in about 11 minutes. I'm going to quickly wash up and start our painting for Matthew Wong. We're going to do 2 of his paintings shortly. I haven't done the outlines for those, but they're fairly simple outlines, so we'll do that in real time shortly here. Thank you so much for joining me. Please hit like and subscribe. Most people who are watching me right now are brand new to the show, so join the Facebook group, upload a photograph of your version of today's painting or any other paintings you're painting, upload them to the Facebook group. In a couple of weeks, we're going to do another feedback session where I will congratulate you and offer some constructive feedback to help you improve your paintings. And if you want to leave a small donation, there's the PayPal link down below. As I said, there's a link to my website and to the Facebook group if you want to contact me directly. So that if you wanted to send me plane tickets or whatever besides, or e-transfer, feel free to do so. Okay, everyone, we'll see you guys here in 10 minutes. Or wherever you are on planet Earth, whatever time, all these videos are there for you to watch at your convenience, right? At any time. See you soon, everybody. Take care. And thanks again to Paul Kane for making such awesome work. Okay, bye-bye, everybody.